The conversation continues about how the NBA will resume play for the 2019-20 season. I'm Sierra Goodwill, here with Mike Petraglia, Josue, Pavon, and our friend Keith Smith. Now, it looks like if and when the NBA does return, it will be probably down in Walt Disney World in Florida. But now the latest conversations are about the format and how it's looking like it could be a 16-team playoff format, kind of like an NCAA tournament March Madness type of bracket. How do you guys feel about that sort of format?
I like the idea. I don't like the timing of it. I've always been a fan of this format. This has been a conversation that's been lingering for a couple of years now. And I feel like it's almost inevitable at this point. But I think with everything that's been going on, this is the wrong time to try this out, so to speak. I just think there's a lot of complications that come with it, including a lot of teams that have spent the entire season with the impression, just like all of us, that they're going to be competing for a top 8 spot in their conference. Also, scheduling. I think that plays a big part. Teams that have played their teams in their conference 2 times as opposed to playing them 4 times. That affects your record. I just don't think this is a good time for them to try it out. I am obviously a big fan of doing the playoff format. I love Doc Rivers' idea. I love that it gives teams that are outside the top 8 an opportunity, a fighting chance to jump in, while also, giving the top teams the rest that they need and giving them the time that they earned. I love that idea. I haven't seen another idea that I like more than Docs. So with me, I would like to see that happen as opposed to the top 16 team format.
Keith?
Yeah, I don't really like it. Same as Josue. I don't like it this year. I think it's just there's already enough happening that's made this a weird season. I don't know why we need to add another thing onto that. So I'm good with keep it the way it is. I also think in prior years when this has been a much bigger, it's kind of a lot more screaming and yelling that we need to go to this. It's because there's 2 or 3 teams in the West that would be playoff teams over the teams in the East at the bottom. Well, our top 8 teams in both sides would be our top 16 teams. So I'm not as concerned about it. I think those teams in the West that didn't get in, they had their shot. We played, 3/4 of the season, or even more than that. And there's no reason why I think we need to make these big changes. Overall, if the NBA is ever going to experiment with it, it's a chance to now when you have all 16 teams in one place and you don't have all the travel issues. But overall, I think there's just too much going on already. Let's just keep some things as traditional as they can be.
I'm with Keith on that, guys. I really do think, though, that the NBA has been guided quite a bit by how summer leagues have been received by players and coaches and NBA front office. And if anything, I think I said this last week, if anything is going to resemble this early summer league several years ago, maybe even a decade back, where you were playing in front of half empty buildings or maybe even practically empty buildings. This is going to be very similar to that with really just the NBA personnel of each team in attendance. And I think this is the way that they're going to approach it. And again, as Keith said, I think, those teams out in the West, they had their chance during the regular season, but, this is kind of throw all things out the window. Let's get the NBA back. And I think that's what the NBA owners and GMs have in mind here.
What's interesting is if they do go ahead with this 16-team March Madness style bracket, the first round matchup for the Celtics is the Philadelphia 76ers, which could have very well been a first round matchup for them had the season played out like normal. It would be exciting to see that rivalry game right off the bat for the Celtics with a really similar opponent. What do you guys think that matchup would look like?
I think that will be one of the fascinating storylines because, the Sixers before the pause and before the break had injury issues. And obviously with Joel Embiid going down, Ben Simmons back being an issue, they had a lot of things on their burner at once. And that season for the Sixers was going down the tubes quick. And if the Sixers can get those 2 players back close to full strength by the time this comes around, that is not a great matchup, as we all know, for the Celtics, if the Sixers are anywhere close to full strength, having those 2 back.
Yeah, I agree, Trags. It certainly makes things harder for the Celtics. But if you look at the full picture, I mean, they still have to figure out what's going to happen with Al Horford. I mean, how does he fit the puzzle? They still haven't answered that question. I mean, now that there isn't any games left, I'm assuming here, of course, that we're going to go right into the playoffs if this thing actually happens. And there's just not enough time for them to figure that out. However, I still think it's a tough matchup for the Celtics. I still favor the Celtics, however. If we're looking at the proposed format, after the Sixers is where it gets really dark for the Celtics. But we don't have to go there right now. But I think if we're talking just Celtics Sixers, I still like the Celtics in that matchup. But yeah, I have to agree with Trags though. This little break is very beneficial for the Sixers. If we're talking about any top team in the Eastern Conference, I think that's one of the, if not the most beneficial this rest has been for the Sixers.
Yeah, I think as you get into this, it's pretty clear that the NBA gods, they want to see the whole world burn, right? We got to do Celtics Sixers. It's the only way to put a fitting capper on this wild season. But I think in general, I agree it's a tough matchup for Boston. We saw that in the regular season. There were challenges, but I think all of those games had something weird in them. A key player was missing on one side or the other, and they were closer than I think people really like to think that they are. And Philly's told us all along, we're built for the playoffs, just get us to the playoffs. But one thing I worry about for Philadelphia's side is they were an absolutely horrible team on the road. Now, there'll be no true road games, but there's not going to be any home games either. And they had one of the most drastic home road splits in the entire NBA. So if you're taking them out of an environment where do their guys need that lift from the crowd to lift them up and get them going? We've seen Joel Embiid's a very emotional guy. He plays to the crowd a lot. If you don't have that for 3 games or whatever the case would have been in a regular playoff series, is that make it a little bit easier. So I think the Celtics are well positioned. I think Boston being a little bit of a younger team, a team that's relying on a lot of younger players, with the hope would be that they are able to bounce back and come into this pretty quicker. And Joel Embiid, we have no idea. We haven't heard a single report of what kind of shape he's in. And if he sat around on the entire break drinking Shirley Temples, Boston may be kind of salivating at that matchup.
What was that report? He has like 2 or 3 Chick-fil-A milkshakes every road trip. Just some sort of craziness. So hopefully someone on the Sixers staff was on his diet a little better during this quarantine. But for all of our Celtics coverage and NBA coverage as we inch closer and closer to a return to the season, check it out on our website at clnsmedia.com, as well as on our YouTube channel at Celtics All Access.
The Garden Report is brought to you by Manscaped, the very best in men's below-the-belt grooming. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code CLNS20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use code CLNS20.